I pushed open the conference room door with my coffee still in hand and everything froze. Talia Brooks stood at the front of the room presenting my project like it was hers. My charts were up on the screen. My data points filled every slide. My exact wording echoed through the speakers. She even used the same hand gesture I had practiced 100 times in the mirror. Everyone in that room watched her like she was a genius, like she had invented something revolutionary. She turned and made eye contact with me, and a smirk spread across her face. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought it might never untie. She really did it. She had actually stolen my work and walked into this room like she owned it. I set my coffee down on a nearby desk with a shaking hand. The presentation continued, and no one even noticed I was there. Heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, I slipped into a seat at the very back of the room. My mind began to whisper questions that had no good answers. How did we get here? How did this moment actually happen? I had worked so hard on this project. I had stayed late. I had fixed every problem. And now a girl I barely knew was standing up there taking all the credit like it was her right. Then my voice started playing in my head, the voice I use when I tell myself the hard truth. My name is Elise Turner, and this is how she underestimated the wrong woman. I watched the room applaud her, as if she had just discovered something incredible. They clapped and cheered, executives nodded. Paul, our manager, beamed with pride at what he thought was Talia's genius. But it wasn't her genius at all. It was mine, stolen from my computer, taken from my brain, and repackaged as something that belonged to someone else. The memory flashed back to months earlier. I found Talia standing at my desk, casually flipping through my printed notes like she owned the place. She was reading my research, my observations, my carefully written thoughts. I had walked up and caught her red-handed, but she just laughed it off like it was nothing. "Oh, I was just curious what you're working on," she said with that easy smile of hers. Her words were light, but something felt wrong about the whole thing. I felt discomfort crawling up my spine like a warning I should have listened to. I ignored it instead. I pushed the feeling away and told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that Talia was just friendly and interested in my work. But something inside me knew better. Something whispered that I shouldn't have let this slide. I shouldn't have brushed it off. I should have done something right then and there. But I didn't. I just smiled awkwardly and went back to my desk, leaving her standing there with access to everything I cared about. Days turned into weeks. Our manager Paul started praising Talia for an innovative trend analysis. The problem was simple and devastating. It was my trend analysis. I had spent hours researching those trends. I had written the analysis. I had created the framework. Talia had never done any of that work, but somehow it was being attributed to her. She would beam with pride whenever Paul mentioned her brilliant insights. I would swallow my protest because I had no proof. I hadn't documented everything carefully. I hadn't saved the right files. I couldn't prove that she had accessed the shared drive that morning when no one else was around. But her lipstick-red smile would linger in my mind long after the conversation ended. I would replay the moment over and over, wondering if I should say something, wondering if anyone would believe me if I did. I felt powerless and frustrated, but I didn't know how to fix it, so I watched her take credit for my ideas, and I said nothing. Everything changed after that. I started locking my documents and tracking every access time to my files. I did it quietly, methodically, like I was building a case against someone I needed to prepare for. If Talia wanted to play a game, then fine. I would be the one writing the rules. I created a system where I could see exactly who opened my files and exactly when they did it. I organized my research with timestamps and clear documentation. I was careful and deliberate. I was patient. Every day I would check my logs and look for suspicious activity. Every night I would prepare myself for what I knew was coming. Talia didn't know that I was watching. She didn't know that I was documenting everything. She thought she could keep stealing from me without consequences, but I was done being the victim. I was done watching her take my work and make it hers. I was going to catch her, and I was going to do it right. After a team happy hour, things came to a head. Talia got tipsy and her mouth became loose with alcohol. She slipped up in the worst way possible. I mean, if someone was borrowing your ideas, it's not like you'd ever speak up, she said to me, patting my arm like we were friends. My jaw clenched so hard, I thought my teeth might crack. She thought I was weak. She actually believed that I would just let her keep stealing from me forever. She thought I was too timid, too nice, too afraid to do anything about it. But I realized something in that moment. If she thought I was weak, that was perfect. Let her think that. Let her believe. I would never stand up to her. Let her walk around confident that I didn't have the courage to fight back. That assumption would become her downfall. I nodded at her comment and said nothing. I let her smile at me like we shared some kind of secret. And I waited. What? Leadership announced a major opportunity that changed everything. A company-wide strategy competition was coming. The winner would get promoted to a better position with a real raise. It was the kind of opportunity people dreamed about. I volunteered immediately. I wanted to show them what I could do. I wanted to prove myself on a big stage. Then Talia volunteered right after me. Her eyes glittered with a challenge. She wanted to compete against me. She wanted to prove something to everyone in that room. I smiled at her, the blandest smile of my life, the kind that gave nothing away. Inside, though, I was already planning. I was already thinking about what I would do next. I was already preparing the game that would change everything. She had no idea what was coming. She had no idea that I had been planning this moment since the day she first stole from me. She thought this competition was her chance to prove herself. But it was actually the rope I was about to use to hang her with. I prepared 2 versions of my project. The first one was absolutely real, complete and perfect, with every detail exactly right. The second one was slightly wrong enough that it would collapse under real scrutiny, but subtle enough that someone arrogant and sloppy would never notice. The second file had small errors hidden throughout, numbers that didn't quite add up correctly. Conclusions that didn't follow from the data, wording that sounded good on the surface but fell apart when you examined it closely. I left the wrong version just vulnerable enough for someone with overconfidence to find it and steal it. I made sure it was on the shared drive where she had already proven she liked to poke around. I even made it look like I had forgotten to secure it properly, like I had been careless with something so important. I knew her weakness. I knew she couldn't resist taking what she thought she needed. The next morning, I checked my access logs. There it was, an unauthorized access notification. Someone had opened the decoy file at exactly 2:14 a.m. I almost laughed out loud at my desk. She didn't even try to hide it. She didn't use a VPN. She didn't try to cover her tracks. She just logged in from her home computer and took what she thought was my project. She was so confident in her ability to get away with it that she wasn't careful at all. I had caught her red-handed. I had proof. The timestamp was there in my system. The file had been accessed. She had stolen from me again, but this time I had evidence. I saved the screenshot. I documented everything. I kept it all in a secure file that only I could access. I quietly presented the real version of my project to the reviewing panel. I made sure to appear professional and prepared. I explained every detail carefully. I answered all their questions with confidence. They loved it. The executives nodded and took notes. They asked thoughtful questions that showed they were really listening and really understanding my work. Meanwhile, Talia was over in her corner cubicle proudly rehearsing my decoy script with confidence she definitely didn't earn. She practiced the presentation over and over. She memorized the words. She prepared hand gestures and transitions. She believed completely in the work she was about to present. She had no idea that it was all built on lies and errors and stolen intellectual property that I had deliberately made wrong. Talia sent me a text message. Hope you're ready to lose, with a smiley face that made me laugh. I stared at that little emoticon and shook my head. It was almost cute how she thought this ended in her favour. She actually believed that she was going to win. She actually thought that presenting my stolen work was going to make her successful. She had no idea that the project she stole was a trap. She had no idea that I had been setting her up for this exact moment. I typed back a simple message. "We'll see," and I meant every character of it. I was ready for this. I had been ready for weeks. I had been planning this since the moment I caught her at my desk. Back to the opening scene. The day of presentation arrived like a bomb counting down to 0. I stepped into the room and immediately noticed something wrong. Talia had somehow hijacked the slot I had booked. She was scheduled to go first. Paul had allowed it. I watched her perform for the executives like she was auditioning for a spotlight she never deserved. She walked to the front with confidence. She started talking about trends and strategy. She clicked through the slides with the smooth movements of someone who had rehearsed this 1,000 times. But I noticed something immediately. Some of the numbers looked off. Some of the conclusions seemed weak. The executives were frowning slightly, but they were still paying attention. An executive in the front row furrowed his brow and said, "Those numbers don't add up." He was right. The numbers in her presentation were wrong because I had made them wrong. Talia froze for half a second, and although it was barely visible, I caught it. My heart steadied. This was it. This was the moment when everything changed. This was the moment she realized she was in trouble. I could see the panic starting to build behind her eyes, but she kept smiling. She kept talking. She tried to push through the objection like it didn't matter. More questions started coming from the executives. More confusion spread through the room. The errors I had built into the decoy file were becoming obvious now. Talia started stumbling through her answers. Her voice trembled as she tried to explain things that didn't make sense. She kept glancing toward me like I was her lifeline or her enemy, like I might somehow save her or destroy her. I sat perfectly still. I didn't react. I didn't smile. I didn't show any emotion at all. I just watched and waited. One executive turned to me and asked, "Elise, do you have any input?" Calmly, I stood up. I walked to the front of the room. Every eye turned to me. "Yes," I said quietly. "I recognize these slides." The room went completely silent. Talia's face drained of colour. She suddenly looked like someone who had just realized that their entire world was about to collapse. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out what I was about to do. I walked to the front, plugged in my own laptop, and revealed everything I had been gathering. I showed the exact timestamps from the file access logs. I displayed the unauthorized access notification from 2:14 a.m. I showed 2 contrasting versions of the file side by side. I displayed the original folder with my authorship metadata completely untouched. My voice was steady and calm. My hands didn't shake. I didn't yell or confront her aggressively. I simply showed the truth. I let the evidence speak for itself. I let the facts tell the story. Executives looked at Talia. Then they looked at Paul. Then they looked at me. Someone muttered, "This is serious." The room felt tense and heavy. Talia whispered, "Elise, please." But I didn't break eye contact with leadership. I said nothing. I let silence fill the space between us. Sometimes silence is more powerful than any words you could say. I was called into a closed-door meeting after the presentation. My nerves tightened because I suddenly feared they might blame me for something. But instead, something unexpected happened. They apologized to me. They thanked me for being honest and for having the courage to speak up. They asked me to walk them through my real proposal, the one I had prepared for the competition. They listened carefully to everything I said. Yet I could sense that an even bigger fallout was coming, something that would affect more than just Talia. Leadership initiated a thorough review of past projects at the company. Patterns began to emerge that shocked everyone. Projects that Talia had gotten praised for looked eerily like older versions of projects I had worked on. And looking deeper, they found similar patterns with work from other people too. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was a serial thief who had been stealing ideas from multiple people across the company for years. She had built her entire reputation on stolen work. Paul tried to defend Talia by saying it was teamwork, but the executives shut that down immediately. He got warned for enabling misconduct and helping to cover up her behaviour. He had known something wasn't right, but he had helped her anyway because he liked her and thought she was smart. Suddenly, he wasn't so confident about his choices anymore. Talia stood alone now. Her allies had abandoned her. Her manager couldn't help her. Everything was falling apart. Talia cornered me in the hallway a few days later. Her mascara was smudged from crying. Her voice was cracking with emotion. "You set me up," she said to me. I looked at her calmly and replied softly, "No, you set yourself up. I just stopped protecting you." She didn't have an answer for that. She just stared at me with tears in her eyes, and I walked away. HR sent an email that changed everything officially. Talia was terminated from her position at the company. Paul was removed from the leadership track and would never advance further. My project was greenlit for implementation, but there was one more twist coming, the biggest shift of all. Something that would change my entire future. I was invited to speak with the VP of the company. She offered me the role that Talia had always wanted. The promotion, the respect, the authority, the role she had tried to steal her way into. I breathed slowly and measured my response carefully. "I accept," I said simply. Weeks later, I presented the strategy to the entire company. I stood where Talia had once stood, trying to wear my skin and pretend to be me. But this time, everything was different. The work was mine. The research was mine. The ideas were mine. The recognition was mine. And the power was mine too. On my first day in my new office, I closed the door and placed my belongings on the desk. I took a deep breath and thought about the journey that brought me here. I didn't scream. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't act out of rage or revenge. I simply let the truth speak louder than her lies. In the end, she destroyed herself trying to be me, while I rose by being better than the games she played. She thought I was weak, I whispered to myself, but I was just patient, and patience wins.